Good to see you. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to my dear friend, one of my favorite brethren in the work of Good Trouble, a justice seeker, and my Senate co-lead, Senator Peter Welch, for your partnership on this bill. And thank you to our advocates for joining us today. It's great to be with so many of our fellow organizers and justice seekers who I call movement family. I'm glad to be here to discuss an issue that is proximate to me and to so many around our country. The crisis of mass incarceration has ravaged our communities, destabilized families, and exacerbated generational trauma. A criminal legal system that disproportionately criminalizes black and brown folks and denies us our basic dignity and humanity. A precise, coordinated, and targeted assault on our voting rights that is meant to exclude these very communities from participating in our democracy. Let me make it plain. The right to vote is sacred in America, and it is essential to citizenship, and all citizens deserve a voice in our democracy. But today, nearly 4.6 million citizens are denied the right to vote because of a criminal conviction, barring them from voting in our federal elections. That is 4.6 million people. 4.6 million people, disproportionately black Americans, who are unfairly disenfranchised and are unable to make their voices heard in our elections. In 48 states across our country, we have a confusing and inconsistent patchwork of laws that treat different crimes as felonies and set different standards for disenfranchisement. What this means is that states can arbitrarily make decisions about who to disenfranchise and for how long, often resulting in people who are actually eligible to vote foregoing voting due to confusion or to avoid further criminalization. These disparities didn't just happen overnight. They're the result of decades of precise, intentional, and legislated policy violence. And as lawmakers, we have an opportunity and an obligation to reject this unjust status quo and advance bold policies that strengthen our democracy and make it more inclusive. That's why we're here today, to introduce the Inclusive Democracy Act, a historic, brand new, first-of-its-kind bill that will end the stain of felony disenfranchisement in America and guarantee the right to vote for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated citizens. Our bill is a reflection of bold, progressive, democratic values. Because with Republicans and the Supreme Court stopping at nothing to undermine voting rights and to exclude black and brown folks from participating in our democracy, we must be just as relentless in protecting and expanding access to the ballot box, including for incarcerated citizens. Now, this week, we mark 68 years since Rosa Parks was bold enough to remain in her seat. And despite what history books may tell us, well, and the banning on books is a conversation for another day, but despite what history books may tell us and the news may report, the civil rights movement did not begin and end with Rosa taking a seat, John crossing a bridge, and Martin leading a march. We are still in the civil rights movement, and Jim Crow is not behind us. Jim Crow is not behind us when state legislatures and extremist courts act daily to disenfranchise us and to silence our votes. Jim Crow is not behind us when bills like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act are not the law of the land. And Jim Crow is not behind us when the former occupant of the White House can lead a violent insurrection and still run for president, while nearly 5 million citizens can have a criminal record and not even cast a ballot. Jim Crow is not behind us. Our democracy is on the line, and the stakes could not be higher. As a Boston City Councilor prior to my time here in Congress, I was proud to advocate for expanded access to the ballot box, requiring ballots be made available in multiple languages, expanding early voting in local elections. And in Congress, I led efforts and legislation to lower the federal voting age to 16 and urged the DOJ to aggressively protect voting rights and to fight against voter suppression. So I have been, and I will continue to fight for voting rights for everyone. And finally, this is more than I usually offer, so I thank you for actively listening. But I do want to just talk about my own lived experience here. This legislation, as someone whose family has been directly impacted by mass incarceration, is deeply personal. Growing up, my father, Martin, was absent for most of my formative years because his addiction was criminalized. This was incredibly destabilizing for our family, and I really feel my father was discarded. He was treated as if he was disposable, and he was alienated from our society. And our family's experience is certainly no anomaly, especially as Black Americans. Hundreds of thousands of people behind the wall are told that they do not matter, that their voices do not matter, that their contributions to society do not matter. Now, while I am proud to share that my father, Martin, is healthy and he is thriving, and he has gone on to make great contributions to society as an accomplished author and also as a professor of journalism, I am not proud that those contributions had to be delayed because our criminal legal system is focused more on replicating hurt and harm instead of rehabilitating productive members of democracy. We have got to disrupt this legacy in this country of treating trauma with more trauma. We need a democracy that values all people. We need a democracy that ensures all citizens can make their voices heard in our elections. So I'm grateful once again to Senator Welch for joining us on this brisk day. I'm grateful for your partnership. Vermont has been a national leader on this issue, and so I'm proud to team up with him to help ensure everyone can make their voice heard in our democracy, including our neighbors behind the wall, those on probation or parole, and anyone involved with the criminal legal system. Now, momentum is growing, and Congress must take action. And now I'll turn it over to our partner in the Senate, Senator Peter Welch of Vermont.
Ayanna, that was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. We miss you in the house, but I'm glad that I can have you in this bicameral way.
Well, it's so good to be here with Congresswoman Pressley. She was a force in the Boston City Council. She continues to be a force right here in the United States House of Representatives. I'm sorry I'm late. I don't attribute that to acting like a senator, because I'm really I'm really happy to be here with folks who are standing up to expand the right to vote to everybody. To everybody. And Ayanna, you have been such a champion for the dispossessed and for noticing those who oftentimes are disregarded. And out of sight, out of mind for many people who are in jail. And Congresswoman Pressley has talked about how our Jim Crow situation, how our justice system has not been equally fair to all our citizens. And it is also the case that our country does have, uses incarceration way more than so many other countries. We're second most incarcerated, I think, in the world. But you know, folks who are committed to jail, get out of jail. And the hope is for everybody that the story of Martin is going to be the story for many, many more people. They have much to offer and much to give. But denying people the right to vote, they're paying their price if they're in jail. It may be more of a price than should be exacted in some cases. But in fact, the goal for all of us is to be full contributing members of the society, the neighborhood that we're in. And one of the basic aspects of voting is you participate in the democratic conversation about our community, our state, and our world. And you know, in Vermont, I was a public defender before I came here to the United States Congress. And in Vermont, everybody can vote, and that means everybody. And it's not that we're making judgments on who should or shouldn't. We're saying everybody should vote. Everybody should participate in the conversation. Everybody should do their best to become part of the democratic process. So I am so grateful to you, Congresswoman Pressley, for introducing this legislation that is going to be another step that you've led us to increase voter participation. This is a time whose idea has come, and I thank you for your work, and I look forward to being your partner along with other colleagues in the Senate to build on the legacy of the voting participation, voting rights work that you've done. The voting rights, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the For the People Act, the Democracy Restoration Act. So thank you, Ayanna.
Thank you.
It's really wonderful to be here and be your partner.
Thank you,
and to be
Senator.
working with you again, and I miss you.
I miss you too. Thank you for making the trek over here. We appreciate you. All right, thank you, Senator. And up next, we'll hear from Danielle Lang of the Campaign Legal Center.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Pressley and Senator Welch, for introducing such a pivotal piece of legislation. Your efforts, as well as the efforts and hard work of all the advocates represented here and all across the nation and behind bars, will have a tremendous impact on those who are directly impacted. My name is Danielle Lang, and I'm the Senior Director of Voting Rights at the Campaign Legal Center, a nonpartisan organization working to protect and strengthen democracy across all levels of our government. And I'm proud to be here today to express CLC's support for the Inclusive Democracy Act. CLC's Restore Your Vote program is one of its kind, and it tackles felony disenfranchisement from all angles, helping to restore the voting rights of individuals with past convictions by providing them the direct services they need to understand and navigate the system, empowering community leaders and affected individuals to monitor the implementation of rights restoration laws that are so often misinterpreted and misapplied by election officials, and working to ensure that eligible incarcerated voters can exercise their right to vote when they are behind bars. And we do all of that work with the following principle in mind: ensuring that we are advancing democracy not just for those who are impacted, but with those who are directly impacted too. And the Inclusive Democracy Act embodies that principle. I know that it was crafted in consultation with grassroots advocates and folks who are impacted, and that means so much to us. This bill would dramatically advance democracy by guaranteeing the right to vote in federal elections for Americans, regardless of criminal conviction. But further, and equally importantly, this bill would guarantee not just the right to vote in theory, but the right to vote in practice. It would require that individuals with past convictions receive notice that they have the right to vote and retain that right to vote. And second, it would ensure that all eligible individuals can effectively participate in the democratic process. That is not true today, even for eligible individuals. There are so many people behind bars who have not been convicted of any crime that are awaiting trial and are presumed innocent until found guilty, but have no meaningful way to participate on election day. Imagine being behind bars, and if the state does not provide you with the tools to vote, access to vote by mail, access to voter registration, you will not be able to participate. This is all a very big deal. Felony disenfranchisement is the biggest remaining obstacle to a true democracy in America. Nationwide, as Congresswoman said, nearly 5 million people are disenfranchised due to a felony conviction, but almost 18 million more may be effectively disenfranchised because of the state patchwork of confusing laws, onerous paperwork requirements, and fear of being prosecuted. And that's to say nothing of the eligible voters incarcerated in county jails who haven't even been convicted of a crime, but are unable to participate in our democracy because of the everyday barriers posed by incarceration. CLC sees the impact of felony disenfranchisement every day in the lives of our clients. This legislation is about my clients, the grandmother who's helping to raise her grandchildren, wanting to have a say in how her tax dollars are spent on public schools. It's about the veteran trying to make sure their services and benefits aren't slashed. It's about the elderly person who has never before had the opportunity to vote, trying to reintegrate into society and vote for a representative who supports funding the services to let them do so. It's about all of us, because our vote is our voice, And we don't have a true democracy unless everyone can access the freedom to vote. And while we've seen some progress in rights restoration, most states still have a lot of work to do to eliminate laws that exclude people with felony convictions. So we applaud Congresswoman Pressley and Senator Welch for stepping up at the federal level to promote the freedom to vote for all Americans. And we thank the advocates and organizers, especially those who themselves have had contact with the criminal legal system, that are tirelessly working to eliminate criminal disenfranchisement. Finally, we urge the U.S. Congress to pass this transformative legislation and push us closer to a more fair, representative, and inclusive democracy. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. Thank you for what you do every day, and thank you so much for animating the people behind the statistics that people often read about. I'm thankful for you, and now I want to do what I think is the most important part of what we're offering here today. I really do believe in the practice of cooperative governing, and that the people closest to the pain should be the closest to the power, driving and informing the policy making. And I've been very intentional. In fact, I'm very proud that I was able to bring many members of the Congressional Black Caucus for the first time together to my district, the Massachusetts 7th, and we did hold a congressional hearing behind the wall at MCI Norfolk because I do want to be intentional about cooperative governing. And I've enlisted the thought partnership of many behind the wall. And what I want to share with you now is an excerpt from testimony provided in a historic hearing in the Massachusetts State House from Alameen Patterson, who is the chair of the African American Coalition Committee, which we refer to as the AACC. And Mr. Patterson is currently incarcerated at MCI Norfolk. And so now I will read his testimony again from this Massachusetts State House hearing. I've never had the chance to participate in the political process my entire 18 years, which means the society that I live in isn't a reflection of my imagination or the individuals who came through the same school to prison pipeline I came through, which is why we live in such squalid conditions. If we could pick the people who make the laws that govern our everyday environment, we have legislators coming through here looking at the food we eat, the water we drink, how they treat our visitors, how so much is wrong and not really being able to connect the dots between the criminal justice system and the community. All the shootings that happen on the outside, all of the inequities that happen in prison, that's all related, that's all connected. The fact that we can't vote is why things are so ugly in here. And so with that, we will turn it over to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Congresswoman Ashley Gantz-Grio. My first question for you is, why do you think a bill like this hasn't been enacted into law?
Well, I mean, I think, again, when you are incarcerated, you become invisible. And so with a lack of visibility, then there is a lack of advocacy and awareness. Again, which is why I do think it's important that we have a government and a Congress that is representative of every walk of life. Again, as someone who's been personally impacted and my family destabilized in this way, these are issues that I've dedicated my entire life in public service to working on. And shortly after my time here in Congress, introduced the People's Justice Guarantee, sort of a North Star on these issues broadly, and worked cooperatively and with intention with impacted families and individuals. And this is now the fifth piece of legislation to come out of that broader effort.
Okay, thank you. And Senator, how do you think your Republican colleagues in the House and the Senate will respond to this?
There's a real problem we have in this country, and that is there's a significant effort to keep people away from the ballot box. And what Congresswoman Pressley has been a leader on is challenging that. I mean, if you can't win at the ballot box, don't let people vote. That has been a tactic in many of the states around the country. So it's not just here in Congress. So I think what's so inspiring to me about what Congresswoman Pressley is doing is saying we're committed to full access to the ballot box as a birthright in this country. So there'll be resistance both here and in other countries, or pardon me, many states. But you know, I'm inspired by the state of Vermont, by the state of Maine, where we've always had access to the ballot box for everybody, including people who are incarcerated. So there is resistance, we know that, and that's what we'll face. But with the help of so many good people who are right here today, standing up for extending access to the ballot box and participation in the full democratic discussion that is so essential for the well-being of all of us in the communities we live in, we'll carry on despite what resistance is there.
That's right, and I do just want to underscore that you know, this resistance has manifested itself in a series of very focused and coordinated attacks from state legislatures to courts, you know, and certainly here that there are active efforts of obstruction. And so they're not taking any days off in their efforts to deny access to the ballot, which is why we can't take any days off, and we have to be just as precise and intentional. They are being very precise, coordinated, and intentional in their assault, and we have to be just as coordinated, precise, and intentional in our affront to their assault to ensure that every voice is heard. Because you do not, you're not disqualified as a citizen because of engagement with the criminal legal system. So this will guarantee their right to vote.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Congresswoman. What would be your message to candidates who do definitely given that this act would find their laws in conflict? You would find their laws in conflict with federal law because built in legislation.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What would be your message to the 11 states who currently indefinitely disenfranchise people?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, it's a grave injustice. You know, again, you know, they have not forfeited their rights of citizenship. And so they deserve to have their voices heard and to have access to the ballot.
And then what would also then be your message for any potential folks who would want to litigate this question also in court, as you just mentioned, that there is a coordinated debate on this voting rights in the legal system? What would be your message to, you know, potentially folks who would oppose this in the courts as well as the court system themselves?
I mean, the bill is called an inclusive democracy, which I think makes an affirmative case. I mean, every person it's a sacred right to vote, and so we need to guarantee that right. I mean, first of all, many people, the mass incarceration has a disparate impact on Black America. So that in and of itself, there's already an injustice there. Then when you layer that with things like prison gerrymandering, there's another injustice there. I mean, so there's layered injustices here that are disenfranchising individuals' right to the ballot and access to our democracy, which really is a fundamental right. So they should be on the right side of history.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.